in this land of Shangri-La, this fictional Canada, where all of the media actually did their job and there would be no need for independent outlets like Northern Perspective to actually show Canadians what is really going on in this country, what would that look like? So we decided to find out. When Pierre Poilievre took a shot at a domestic operative attacking his leadership, the media turned it into a crisis of judgment, unity, and fitness to govern. But Mark Carney just mocked Donald Trump in the middle of active trade negotiations, after Canada already backed away from its own threats last year, yet threatened new ones. Guess what the media said about that? Let's take a look.
I would now like to inform you that the teleprompter has ceased to function. Unlike a certain world leader, I do not view this as a conspiracy.
Okay, that's what was said. It was said yesterday at a housing announcement that Mark Carney was making while he was in Toronto. Just a passing comment, just a few seconds. But he was poking fun at the fact that Donald Trump's teleprompter broke and wouldn't function while he was speaking, at the UN, and then started raising questions about, why did it break, and did somebody do it intentionally, and that sort of thing. Saying things that Trump does. But Mark Carney is doing this right after Donald Trump threatened to increase tariffs on Canada. While he's allegedly intensifying discussions with the United States, Mark Carney says this. Now, Pierre Poilievre, during the Conservative barbecue in July, made a passing comment congratulating Carolyn Finlay, who won the leadership race of the Conservative Party out in BC, and had just made a passing comment saying, basically she won it against Liberal lobbyists from Ontario. And then all hell broke loose. So just to remind everybody, or maybe in case you haven't seen some of the media coverage on this one passing comment out of probably 15 minutes of speaking, it was probably about the same, if not less, speaking time than Mark Carney on Donald Trump. This is what the media did with that. This is from Global News. Not ready to govern. Poilievre facing criticism over remark at Calgary Stampede. Questions emerge over Conservative Party unity. BC Conservative candidate tells Poilievre to unite, not divide, after Stampede jab. Conservatives fear fundraising slump amid sagging polls and infighting. The humiliation of Pierre Poilievre continues from the Globe and Mail. This is what they did and continue to do after that remark. It's pretty crazy. But meanwhile, Mark Carney yesterday decides to escalate the tension with the United States instead of being a responsible leader and trying to diffuse the situation, trying to speak like an adult. Wasn't Mark Carney supposed to be the adult in the room? That's what I kept hearing over the course of January 2025 all the way up to the general election. What does that say about his remark to Donald Trump? And again, you don't have to like or hate Donald Trump. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's what the Prime Minister is saying. He's our leader. That's who I'm worried about. That's who I can vote for or against. I can't vote for Donald Trump. I can't vote against Donald Trump. So we're worrying about what's happening in Canada. Now, here is some of the coverage that has come out in the last 24 hours since he's made this remark. Canada ready to get tougher if U.S. trade deal isn't reached before deadline, Carney says. Canada has nasty leadership, says Trump during Las Vegas speech. Carney responds after Trump says nasty Canada screwed U.S. with tariffs. Faced with teleprompter glitch, Canada's Carney mocks Trump. This is the only one that I found that actually talks about this. So credit where credit is due to Reuters, but it's not one of the mainstream media reports that many Canadians actually look at, which is Globe and Mail, which is Global News, which is CTV and CBC. So in this article, they actually talk about the fact that Mark Carney made this remark, and there's some tense negotiations and there's some division in the US relationship. It's a very short article, but at least they talked about it. When we go back to the Globe and Mail article that talks about Carney getting tough, it mentions that Carney made this remark, but it was literally a footnote. It was the last couple of paragraphs in the article, and it glazed over it. On Wednesday, the Prime Minister, who's typically careful not to unnecessarily provoke the mercurial U.S. President, at one point mocked him. When Mr. Carney's teleprompter broke down, he referenced an episode last year in which Mr. Trump accused the United Nations of, quote-unquote, sabotage over similar technical difficulties. Quote, unlike a certain world leader, and, quote, Mr. Carney quipped, quote, I do not view this as a conspiracy, end quote. And they don't mention anything else. Nothing. Not the fact that maybe you shouldn't have done that. So you have to wonder, what really is going on here? And I think a lot of Canadians have come to similar conclusions that, frankly, how can you come to different conclusions that the Conservatives are asking themselves? How is the mainstream media in this country holding the official opposition to a higher standard than the actual government itself? How are they holding the official opposition to more account than they do the Prime Minister? So we asked ourselves, what would the headlines read? In this land of Shangri-La, this fictional Canada, where all of the media actually did their job and there would be no need for independent outlets like Northern Perspective to actually show Canadians what is really going on in this country, what would that look like? So we decided to find out. So what we did is we didn't prompt this. We didn't do anything kind of fishy here. What we did is we fed AI a bunch of articles, just headlines, and we said, imagine if the media was treating this situation of Carney talking about Trump the same way and with the same approach that they did with Pierre Poilievre, just to put them on an even playing field. And the AI gave us back some results. Now, none of these are new news articles. They're not real. We just took existing articles and changed the headlines so we could see what it might look like if today's media actually held Carney to account. Check it out. Carney faces questions over judgment after vowing to get tougher with U.S. before trade deadline. Carney faces backlash for taunting Trump during trade talks. Carney under fire for mocking Trump as steel tariff talks intensify. Carney's jab at Trump raises questions about judgment during trade talks. Carney sparks backlash with Trump dig as trade deadline nears. That might be what the mainstream media would be reporting if they actually took the same approach to the Liberal Party, to Prime Minister Carney, as they did to the Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre. If only, right? If only. But this is why we're here. And this is why we do what we do. This is why many other people do what they do. But I want to go back to something. I want to go back to this article where he says Canada's going to get tougher if the U.S. trade deal isn't reached before the deadline. And it's kind of amazing because we put a video yesterday that actually went through all of Carney's capitulations last year, leading up to him essentially getting on his knees before Donald Trump. And I think it's crazy that this story and this statement came out the day after. So Mark Carney is threatening to get tough on Donald Trump if something isn't done. So I just want to remind people of what he said last year. Ladies and gentlemen, this is back in June 27th of 2025, and it says, Canada's steel producers tell government its tariff protection measures aren't enough. And in this article, Carney says this: Prime Minister Mark Carney has threatened to increase counter tariffs on U.S.-produced steel and aluminum if Canada does not reach a broader trade deal with Trump by July 21st. Trump on Friday abruptly cut off trade talks with Canada over its new tax targeting U.S. technology firms. Quote, these are temporary and calibrated measures that could be expanded depending on the outcome of ongoing discussions with the United States. We are prepared to adjust our response as needed, a spokesperson for the finance minister said. And then, not even a month later, Canada cancels these threats, even as Trump continues to escalate. So if Mark Carney thinks that we actually buy that he's going to do anything, we don't. You've already played this card. You played it last year, and you folded your hand within a month. So I don't think Donald Trump is shaking in his boots about this threat, because you've already demonstrated to him that you're not going to follow through. Now, thankfully, there was one reporter that was asking Mr. Carney about the steel tariffs and what this actually meant, and Carney didn't seem to like the implication that she was making.
Hi, Prime Minister. Laura Stone, Globe and Mail. On the trade front, we understand that there have been detailed discussions on steel and aluminum tariffs, but significantly less on autos. So would you accept a deal that punts auto tariffs to the more extensive USMCA negotiations next year?
Canada's been very clear. We want all 232s addressed, all strategic sectors, which, for clarity,
but it's not being discussed.
Well, you don't know that. You don't know that. I know what's being discussed. I'm part of those discussions, so Canada's position is as I just stated, and that's what we say in the room.
Question. Next question.
So, just so you know, that wasn't our video that actually cut off. That was the CPAC feed. That's all we got. But what Laura Stone is asking him is essentially like, look, you're not even talking about autos when it comes to tariffs. And Carney didn't really flinch at that. He accepted the premise of the question. And then he started talking about, steel and everything like that. And that's where the feed kind of paused. But then Laura comes back and says, but you're not even talking about it. Well, you don't know that. You don't know that because you're not there. I'm in the room. Okay. But you didn't say, yes, we are. Like, you can't say, well, you don't know that we're not, and then not say that you are. It doesn't compromise your negotiating position to just say, well, actually, we are talking about auto tariffs in the room. So just to correct your information. But he didn't say that. He made a quippy remark. And then that was it. And then the moderator moved on to the next question. Can't be having difficult questions posed to the Prime Minister about the trade negotiations. Not even, and this was exactly 32 minutes after Mr. Carney made that insult at Donald Trump. So this is what we're getting, right? This is what we're getting. Are we going to get anywhere with this? Who knows? I worry for the sake of the people that are depending on their jobs, that are already losing their jobs, over all of the damage that has been done to this industry, because Mark Carney and Donald Trump haven't actually gotten a deal. The U.S. seems to be the one that's actually putting forth effort here, because they've been talking to Mexico this whole time, and we haven't talked to the U.S. about this really at all. Carney says he's actively in discussions. Okay, we'll get it done. Maybe if, instead of saying, who cares, you should have gotten this done almost a year ago. I thought this was supposed to be done by July 21st. Otherwise, you're going to lay down the hammer on Donald Trump. And then you moved it to August. And then you didn't do anything. Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. So I think it's really rich that this is the way the media treats the politicians when it comes to the Conservatives versus the Liberals and the government. It's frankly a disgrace. Must be hard to be some of these journalists that are trying to do their job, are trying to ask good questions. Like Laura Stone, I'll give credit where credit's due. She's pretty balanced. Judy Trinh, CTV News, she's not afraid to ask tough questions. In most cases, the problem isn't the journalists. In a lot of cases, the problem's above them. The editors, the producers, the executive. They set the agenda. You shouldn't be setting the agenda. There should be no agenda. And if there is, it's to get to the truth and to hold the government to account. It shouldn't be, well, we can't treat the government too badly because they're giving us tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. So we got to be careful what we put out. That's not what you're paid to do. And if you're too afraid to do that, if you're too afraid to hold this government to account, like is literally your job in a democracy, then go do something else. Go work for Hollywood, because they deal in fiction all the time. And Canadians are starving for the truth, which is why viewership in all of the mainstream media is going down.